welcome to the Trappings and Trinkets Knitting Podcast, and I'm your host, Nicole. So today we're kind of going to be all over the place. I've got some things to talk about and to show you here, and then I'm going to stand up and show you my dress that I'm wearing. This is the Metamorphic dress, and I sewed it as part of a summer dress along that was sponsored by Modern Society and So Hungry Hippie. They are continuing, so this was the dress for June. They are continuing the sew along or the dress along in July, and the pattern that they chose is the painted portrait dress by Anna Maria Horner, I think is her name. If you watch the Fat Squirrel podcast, she actually made this dress very recently, like within the last month, so you might have heard of the dress because of that. But if you're interested, it's fun to do it as part of a group that's all making the same thing, and you can go and see the project pictures from other people on Instagram, and the people that are sponsoring or leading the dress along, they are offering, like they're blogging about it, and they're offering videos and like little hints along the way. So I would highly recommend that if you are, especially if you're like a novice sewer or, you know, just someone that's not super confident, it's a great way to do it. You'll have lots of people that you can ask questions or, you know, share hints with. Okay, so let's talk lately in the life of Trappings and Trinkets. So honestly, like craft business, knitting business is pretty slow in the summertime, and that's fine. That's to be expected. I really wish that I had more space in my house that I could use to make and then store things, because then I would be able to like work in the summer to get ready for the busy time, which is like fall, winter. But I don't. Like we don't really have, like honestly, like my bedroom, there's been a lot of like large Rubbermaid containers that have started taking over our closet. And that's where I store my supplies, because we do have a basement, but it's not like a nice finished basement. It's like a basement. Like our house was built in the late 50s, and it's like an old basement. So I don't want things that go to other people to smell like old basement. So I don't put any of my supplies down there. So on the main level of our house, we don't really have we certainly don't have any rooms dedicated to crafty stuff. And we don't really even have any storage space that is solely for the business. So because of that, we actually have been looking around kind of casually, but more seriously than, you know, in the past. We've been looking around for houses that are for sale in our area where I could have a dedicated room for my business. And so we haven't been successful yet. We've probably looked at a dozen houses or so. And it's one of those things where like it would be so nice to have that, but it would have to be a pretty special house for us to go to the trouble to like, you know, pay a lot more and move. So, so that it would have to be something very special. So we haven't found that yet, but we did. There's a house in our neighborhood that is actually just one street over from where we live. And it's always kind of looked to me like maybe that house would be very much like our own house, except it looked like it had a couple of bedrooms on an upper level that, like, from the front, this house looks like a ranch, but from the back, it looks like a 2-story house. So I thought that would be nice, because then I would still have all the space of like a regular ranch, but we would have a couple rooms upstairs where, you know, maybe I could have a craft room or a guest room or that kind of thing. So amazingly, that house came up for sale, and Jason and I have always told each other, like, if that house goes up for sale, like, we're totally looking at it, and maybe we would even buy it, because it's a nice looking house. It's on a nice lot. And so we went there, and I knew that the person that lived there we've been here for 20 years, and the person that has lived there, as far as I know, for those whole 20 years, was a older lady, and I'm not sure that her husband was ever alive when we were here. So maybe 10 years ago, her house got toilet paper. Like she has a large tree in the front yard, and somebody came along and threw a bunch of toilet paper in it, and I knew that lady was like probably 80-ish or maybe older at the time. So when I think it was my son that was with me, we drove by her house one morning and I was like, oh, look, somebody toilet papered her tree. And so we turned around and went home and got some garbage bags, and he and I took as much of the toilet paper down as we could reach. And so she came to the door and, waved at us like she was old enough that maybe it was a little hard for her to get around and she didn't want to come out into the yard for whatever reason. But even then, like 10 years ago, she looked like she was pretty old. So what I'm trying to say here is I think she may have been the only owner of that house. It was probably built in the 50s-ish, because that's when a lot of the houses in this end of the neighborhood were built, and hers looks like it's kind of contemporary to ours. So it might be early 50s, but it's definitely of that time period. And like it was so 50s that like the bathrooms were still, like one of them had only rose pink toilet, bathtub, sink. One had mint green toilet, bathroom, sink. One had like that powder blue toilet, bathroom, sink. So like those had not been updated. I mean, maybe there was like a different vanity or whatever, but like all the fixtures were circa 1950. Really all through the house, all I could think was like, this house is a total, like somebody has to come in here and be willing to redo everything. Like the paint was coming off the walls. I mean, there was so much in there that just needed maintenance, and I mean, not even updating for like modernization's sake, like not for like decorative sake, although like you'll sell the house easier if it's, not, if it doesn't look like it's straight out of the 50s. But just for like, you can't have paint falling off the walls. Like that's not how anybody wants to live. So it was just, that's weird. NSA's listening to me. I don't know what I said that I activated Siri. I don't even have my Hey Siri turned on.
Sorry, I can only take that request while you're listening to a song or podcast.
Okay, I guess I do have it turned on. Okay, what was I saying? Yeah, this house was a big challenge. And I understand big challenges because when we moved in here, it was like we saw the bones of the house and we were like, okay, this is going to be great once we redo everything. And then we spent the next 15 years redoing everything. So I don't want to do that again. We did that for 15 years. Like, I am not interested now. Like, I'll paint a couple rooms. That's about as far as I'm willing to go. So anyway, the search continues. We're not dying to move, but we're keeping an eye on things. So we'll see how that goes. So the other thing we did these past couple weeks, actually this was last weekend, we went to our son's college because it was parent orientation week. So the funny thing is, this is also the college my husband and I went to. So like we were already oriented to a lot of what goes on there. But it was definitely helpful to be there on the other side of things as the parent. And like before we left, I said to my husband, like, do you think this is going to be 6 hours of them telling us like, don't hover over your children? Because I don't need that lesson. Like, I understand that. But it was a lot more than that. So, people from a bunch of different departments spoke, the housing people, the campus life people, the dean of students, the health services, the financial aid department, the cafeteria manager, just a lot of different areas of campus, and just kind of telling us what our kids can expect and what kind of services are available to them. So it was actually a really good day. So the one thing that happened that I was like, that was a little crazy. So this college chooses a book, and they send that book title out to all of the incoming freshmen. And they say, this is your summer reading assignment. We want you to read this book because once you get on campus during the student orientation week, we're going to use this book for some discussions. And they also do like an essay contest. And I think the prize is like a pretty hefty credit to the bookstore. So for kids that need to buy textbooks, that's always appreciated to have some money to credit toward the bookstore. So the book that they chose is called Becoming Nicole. It is not about me, although they did choose a great name for the character. And I've never read it, so I can't say whether it's a good book or not. I really don't know anything about it other than it is the story of a transgendered teenager. So when I heard that was what they were choosing, having a history at this college, like I understand the culture there. And I thought, oh, okay, this is really smart of them. They chose a book that is going to have it's going to be a controversial topic to discuss. There's going to be a wide range of feelings about just the topic of the book, not even like how good a book it is or like what the character does or whatever. Just the fact that it's about a transitioning teenager, like that's a thing that people are going to have opinions and feelings about. So they didn't, obviously they didn't like send this philosophy along with the book, but just knowing the culture of this campus from 20 years ago, but I'm guessing it is pretty similar now. I think that what they are doing here is, my first thought was, okay, great. They're choosing a book. The overarching topic is something that people are going to have a wide range of feelings and thoughts about. And so they are inviting these kids right off the bat to have a discussion about something that for some people is going to be very difficult. For some people, they're going to feel like they are absolutely right about it, and other people in the room are going to challenge them. And that happens from every direction. So there's going to be kids there that think that being transgender is perfectly normal, and they are going to have to listen to kids in the room that think, no, that's goes against God's plan, and that's not natural. And so each type of person is going to have to listen to the opinions of people that do not agree with them, and they're going to have to find a way to express what they think in a respectful way, in a way that allows them to consider other people's ideas. And it's going to be a tough discussion. And so I love that they picked this book. I love that they didn't like go with something, it's not the Coffee Clatch Book Club. It's an educational institution. They are supposed to teach people to think, to challenge each other's ideas and to challenge their own ideas, and to consider the opinions of people who are not like them. So we're in Illinois, and if you don't live in Illinois, you may have the impression that like Illinois is super liberal, and because Chicago is here, and so everybody here is totally fine with every progressive social idea. That is not the case. In the Chicago area, that is a lot more, that is definitely a haven of progressive type of ideas and lifestyles. Most of the rest of Illinois is pretty conservative. Most of the kids that go to this college are from either Illinois or one of the surrounding states in the Midwest. There are people that come from other states farther out. We sat with a parent that had driven there from Maryland. I think I heard somebody yell at he didn't just yell it out. They were asking at the orientation, like, where are you from? I heard California. So, there are people, I think I heard one from, anyway, there are people from farther afield, and there are even international students, but by and large, the population of the college really comes from Illinois, and I would say about half of it is Chicago area, half of it is downstate. So this is going to be a real mix of, family backgrounds, cultural backgrounds. So this book is going to be interesting to discuss. And so I was even happier that they chose it when at the orientation, one of the fathers raised his hand and said, why did you choose this book? Why didn't you choose a few books and give the kids a choice of what they read? And so this person very skillfully, or the person he was addressing, very skillfully answered his question. And basically she just said, well, we want all of the kids to read the same book because then they can all discuss the same book. Like, it wouldn't work the same if a third of the class read this book and then another group read this book and another group read this book. Like, this is the thing that they all have in common. The first minute they get on campus, they've all read this book and they have something that they can talk about. Not to mention the fact that if they break into groups or, as a whole have some kind of group discussion, like, they all have the same information to come from. But what I would have wanted to say to this man is, they chose that book because of people like, obviously, you, who are not real thrilled at the idea of having to consider ideas that you're uncomfortable with. That is what college is supposed to be. It's not, you didn't send your kid to technical school to learn how to be a welder or how to be a plumber. You are sending them to a school who thinks that it is their mission to teach your child to think, to question, to be able to carry on conversations in the world. And not all those conversations are comfortable, and not all those conversations are ones that he or she is going to want to be in, but like, that's life. So luckily I was not the person that had to answer that question, because I don't know, I probably would have alienated that father. She was probably right to not go into depth about it. But it says something about that dad, that he is willing to send his kid to a liberal arts university. And maybe he was confused because the university is affiliated with a church. Although, having gone there for 4 years, I understand that the church doesn't dictate anything, and the students are not expected to do anything as far as religion goes. And I know for a fact that they accept students who claim to be either agnostic or atheist. That is a question on your application. Like, they ask you what your religion is, or if you don't have a religion. And so I know for a fact, because there were people that I knew that were accepted that had claimed, one or the other of not having a religion or questioning religion. So anyway, so maybe he was confused. He thought this was going to be a churchy school. It is not a churchy school, and I'm very glad for that. I think that there's a place for religion and church and spirituality and all of that kind of stuff. That's very valuable for a lot of people. There is also a place for education and thinking and proof and evidence and discussion and ideas, and they don't have to be at all related to your religion or your spiritual beliefs. So I'm just thrilled with knowing that the school is challenging the students right off the bat, and I am totally here for it. So to that dad, sorry. Hopefully your child is going to end up more comfortable with considering ideas that they are uncomfortable with. And it doesn't mean they have to believe them. It just means that they have to be willing to have the conversation. They're also going to meet a lot of people at college that you'll probably be surprised at how their personal values change over the time that they're there. Because, the more people that you meet who are different than you, the more you realize, like, they're just people. They're just trying to do their thing. And, I think that there is an idea among conservative people that, well, these kids, they go off to college and they come back and they've turned into Democrats. they've turned liberal. Yeah, that probably does happen a lot. I don't think it has anything to do with a college like trying to turn kids against God or to turn kids into any sort of political affiliation. I think it has a lot to do with, you go to college and you meet a bunch of people who are not from your hometown. And so you have all these experiences with people who are very different than you. And you go, oh, yeah, I don't hate any of these people. So it is very difficult to stay socially conservative if you have lived a life that's exposed you to people who are outside of your, the little comfort zone that you were born into. Because for the most part, people of all groups are totally fine. Like, they're not out to hurt me. They're just living their lives. So why would I ever wish them harm? So anyway, send your kids to a liberal arts university. They are great, and I am so looking forward to my son going off to college because I know how much he's going to grow in the next 4 years, and I think that's a great thing. So while I was there, I was doing a little knitting. I brought my very easy knitting project with me because I knew 6 hours of sitting and listening to people talk, that's a lot. So I have this shawl, and it right now is this big. And so I could stop. This could be a little kerchief kind of thing. I didn't bind it off because I was thinking maybe I wouldn't stop. Although now, I mean, once I looked at it, I thought maybe I'll just block it and see how big it gets because it might grow quite a lot. I'll have to put another needle on the end here if I'm going to block it because I think it'll stretch out past what this needle, stretch out past this 40 inches that this needle will accommodate. But I think that's my plan. So this is the Dream in Color shawl, a groovy shawl. Groovy is the pattern. And it's just stockinette and reverse stockinette stripes. So it's a very easy pattern, and I will block that and have it, I don't know, continue or maybe not. Continue or back it out and bind off that last row. We'll see. So that's what I was working on. So here is the finished Metamorphic dress. This is a pattern by a pattern maker called So Liberated, and it is available on the web, so you can download it digitally and just print it off from your computer at home. They actually include 2 files. One is for a home printer, and one is for like if you bring it to Kinko's or Staples or something like that, any sort of copy shop. But I was really happy with the finished product. This is the first one I've made, so I was pleasantly surprised that it turned out as well as it did on my first try. I did not make a muslin. I just jumped right in with my real fabric. So as you can see, it's a relaxed fit. It has lots of ease here at the Empire waist area. The bust measurement that I chose was within a 1/4 inch of my actual bust measurement, and as you can see, like there is a little bit of wiggle room there, but it's not a ton. So it turned out, I think that the chart said that the pattern is written with about 1.5 inches of ease. So I'd say that's probably about what I ended up with. This dress has a nice open scoop neckline. The waist in front is higher than the waist in back. So the bodice part in back connects down here to the skirt, while the front seam is up here. So as you can see, the hem of the skirt is also lower in the back than in the front. And that's the skirt pieces are actually identical on the front and back. The only reason it's lower is because the bodice is lower. So if you were to modify that or to accidentally cut out 2 front pieces, your back would not be lower. You can see there's a little raised hem here in the front and also in the back. So you can see the little under layer poking out there, and this is it's a fully lined dress because it's reversible. So this red goes all the way up. And I actually could turn this inside out and you would see just a full red dress. You wouldn't see the purple at all, since, you know, you can see that all the way around the purple dress is a little bit higher, even on the sides here. So if you flip it fully inside out, you can just wear it as a solid color dress and you would not see this upper layer. So let's talk about things that I liked and things that maybe I would change. So there were a lot of things I liked about this dress. I like the fit. I like the ease of putting it together. There was one step that I was like, I read it in the pattern and I was like, I have no idea what I'm supposed to do here. It's the thing, she refers to it as the burrito method, and it involves rolling up the dress from side to side. And as I was reading it, I was like, I don't understand what's happening here. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. I don't know how this is gonna like progress the dress in any way. So I was very glad that there was a video that went along with it. So I would say just save yourself. I reread that probably at least a dozen times, and I was still like, I don't even know what's happening. So I ended up watching the video, and when I watched the video, I was like, oh, this totally makes sense, and I could do this, and I see what's going on. So just save yourself the trouble and watch the video instead of trying to decode the directions. So besides that, everything else was very easy to follow. I think there was like 5 pages or so of instructions, but it's pretty big print. I think there was only like 8 steps in making the dress. So it is a pretty simple thing, although it takes some time because you really are basically making 2 dresses. And so I think start to finish, well, it may have taken me about an hour to cut out the pattern pieces. And then I think I timed about 7 hours to sew it. And I just did it all in one day and just basically dedicated that day to making a dress. So it took about 8 hours probably total, which is not too bad for basically making 2 dresses. So, and I wore this on Tuesday, and now it's Thursday, and I just turned it inside out. So I wore the solid color on Tuesday, and here I am wearing it again on Thursday. So that was nice that I could wear it twice before throwing it in the laundry. So a couple things that I would do differently next time. I feel like the neckline is a little bit wide for my frame, and I don't feel like my bust is unusually large for my frame. So as I look at other project pictures, this seems to be a common thing that happens. I see a lot of straps that kind of angle out farther than I would want them, or even slip off the, not necessarily like slip off the shoulders, but like they're coming off at weird angles. So I would like my dress straps to fit like this, because that's where my bra is. So I want my straps to be on top of my bra straps. So I would redraft this a little bit for me. And that would really just entail taking this bodice pattern piece and shifting it a little bit at an angle so that this piece was more straight up, and then kind of retracing it to modify it. So that is my plan, because I definitely will make another one of these dresses, and I would like it if the bodice fit a little bit more uprightly instead of out to the side. Another thing I would do differently, I will show, oh, I can't show you, it's not on this side. I'll show you in just a second. Let's do a little presto changeo. Hey, look, it's me. Okay, so here's the red side. I'll angle this down a little bit so you can see it entirely. So if we do the red side, it looks like this, and the red side has pockets in the side seams. So when I put my hands in my pockets, I expect them to be about right here. This is like my very upper thigh. Like if I go like this, I'm feeling the bottom of my underwear, like the leg seam of my underwear. So I expect pockets to be somewhere right in that area. So these pockets are here. So you can see that that is a little bit low for my taste. Now check this out. So the main thing I do with my pockets while I'm walking around, well, not just in the house, but like if I'm out some places, is I use it for my phone. So I'm gonna put my phone in this pocket, and where is it? So this phone is now down here, right by the bottom of my dress. So if I were to go to retrieve my pocket or my phone, there we go. Now I got it. So that's not ideal. I do not like the depth of the pockets. And I did use the, like there's dots on the pattern to show you where to line up the pockets to sew them in. I use those dots, and I don't really know why they're so low. So that is too low for me. When I measured it out to see how I would modify that, it would be like 2.5 or 3 inches higher is where I would put them. So I would say you might want to check that out before you sew in your pockets, because this is bad enough that I'm thinking I probably need to open up this side seam and reposition the pockets and then sew it back together. So that's kind of on my list of things to do, although it probably won't get done anytime soon, but it's on my list. So the other problem, honestly, with having something in a pocket that is so low in the skirt, so this is a like a jersey knit, very wiggly sort of fabric. So when I'm walking around, the skirt swings a lot, right? So as I'm walking down the hall or through the kitchen or whatever, my phone in my pocket is swinging around, and I've already had a problem with it, like smacking into the kitchen chair or the wall or whatever. So it's not great to have a pocket so far down in your skirt, because it's too unstructured down there, and it's going to flop around and run into things. So I don't like that. All right, so here we are again. So for my third thing I would do differently, and this is not at all a flaw in the pattern, it's just something that I will do differently because I thought of it, and I will. So these pockets on the front of the purple side, the up, what is it called, like the top dress, they're just little squares. They blend in really well, so hopefully you can just see that it's a square there. And I really liked the pockets on that it kind of reminds me of like a 1940s house dress type of dress that I made a couple months ago. Those pockets were really cute, and they were a little bit roomier, and they kind of had a little more shape to them. I'll flash a picture of them on the screen here so you can see. But if I make this, well, when I make this dress again, I will probably use the pockets from that pattern. It's Simplicity 1040. Just because I thought those pockets were really cute, and they would blend in well with this pattern. These patch pockets are fine. They're just a little boring, and they're a little bit small. So whatever. And then the last thing that I will definitely do something about is this armhole. This is a really large armhole. So the side of my bra starts right here. So that's like 1.5 inches, 2 inches of bra showing if I'm not wearing a shirt, which, like, I get it that the dress was made so that you could wear it under shirts, or you could wear shirts under it. I think you could still wear shirts under it if the side seam was a little bit higher here. So I will probably raise this up at least 1.5 inches. I'm going to have to measure it and make sure. But I do plan that in the fall I could wear a long sleeve t-shirt underneath this and put it over leggings. Like this is a dress that I could take into different seasons, but I really made it primarily as a summer dress. And let me tell you, like, summers in Illinois, they get pretty hot. So I really, it's already a 2-layer dress. I really don't need another layer underneath it for summertime. We're coming into July here. There's going to be strings of days that are with highs in the mid to upper 90s. Like sometimes it even goes over 100 here. So the multiple layers are really not something that I'm going to purposely do to myself. So now the thing that I do need to worry about here is that I'm not sure how raising this up like that is going to affect how the front lays. Like hopefully it will still lay flat here and it won't interfere because the armhole is tighter. If they're like, I hope there's no bust issues. And obviously I'm not going to do it just by cutting off the top of the shoulder. I'm going to do it by adding more pattern paper here. So again, when I redraft it, I will just draw this armhole circle a little bit, or the curve here a little bit higher. So hopefully that doesn't mess up the fit of the bust, but it's something I'm going to have to deal with if that happens. One last thing that I did do differently, I didn't see this indicated in the pattern, but once I put the dress on and I noticed that the layers kind of shifted against each other, like when I was on the purple side, I would see a little bit of the red peeking out and vice versa. So I didn't really love that. So I thought, well, I'm just going to iron it and top stitch it. And that way these edges will lay flatter. So I think now you don't really see the opposite layer. Well, no, I guess you don't. You don't really see the opposite layer when I'm, depending on what side it's flipped to. But that's only because of this top stitching. If I did it around the armholes and I did it around the entire neckline. So if I hadn't done that, I think that the dress would be shiftier. So it helps it to lay flat. So when I did that, I think I had the purple side up on my sewing machine. So I was using the purple thread in the top, and then because the underside is red, I used the red thread in the bobbin, so that depending on what side the thread was on, it would coordinate with the fabric. So just, if you do top stitching, remember to put the correct thread in the right place so that Like, I don't want purple thread top stitching the red, right? Okay. I'm sure that makes sense. Okay, so those are all the things that I would do differently, and the things that I liked. And really, there was a long list of things that I liked. I just didn't make note of those before I started talking here today. So if you're interested, I did write a big blog post about this at trappingsandtrinkets.com. So let's talk about my other sewing project. So this one is like, it's like 2/3 of the way there. So I've been making this nightgown. It's like this nice periwinkle blue. It's a cotton fabric, but it's like a, I want to say it's like a brushed cotton. Like, it has a very soft feel. It's not like a stiffer quilter's cotton. So my plan was to make something with a gathered bodice so that the bodice was fitted and then the rest of the nightgown was, you know, flared. My hope, or my thought process was that the fitted part would go down to about where this is. So this is like upper belly. Like, my belly button is right here. So it's a couple inches above my belly button. So that would give it enough shape that when the dress, or when the nightgown flared out, it wouldn't be like tent fitting. It would fit like a empire waist dress. So that was what I was hoping. So I did that. I cut out the pieces, and I can't really remember. Oh, I used an existing nightgown that really doesn't look anything like this, but it was the right size. So that's what I used to cut out the general pieces for this. And then I just went to work. Before I even cut the neckline, I sewed these pleats in. So I just did a bunch of pleats, and I just did them deep enough that I thought, okay, well, that'll be enough to get it past my bust. So when I went to cut the neckline, I realized, oh, once that neckline's in there, this does not go down past my bust. It basically goes like right to the fullest part, and then it flares out. So if you have watched my podcast, I had mentioned earlier that, like, I was frustrated because all the nightgowns in stores were either like slinky, sexy, you know, barely any fabric nightgowns, or they were these giant tent nightgowns. And so, like, my hope was to not make, that was my only goal, to not make a giant tent nightgown. Well, guess what this is right now? So that's exactly how it looks right now, because when you stop the pleats at the fullest part of the bust, that's like, it's just giant from then on down. So what I need to do is, I'm going to put this on inside out. So here's how I'm going to correct this problem, if you're interested. I'm going to put it on inside out. I'm going to put this on, and then I'm going to draw myself a line on the fabric with like one of those erasable, not erasable, but like the disappearing ink fabric pens that I have. So I'll put a line here for myself. It's going to be somewhere around here. And then I'm going to sew these pleats down a little bit farther the whole way. So until I get down to that line. And then try it back on. And hopefully that will give me the right amount of fitted bodice. And really, once that's done and I know that the fit is correct, then I can put the finish on the sleeves. Well, not sleeves, the armholes. And that'll just look like the finish that I put on the neckline. This is just bias tape that I made out of the same fabric that I'm doing the dress out of. And then hem it, and it'll be done. And probably, I'm guessing I'm going to cut a little length off of it too, because right now it is very long. But I'm thinking like right under the knee is probably where I'll cut it off at. So it's close. It's getting there. Things are going well. I just need to go back a step and get those pleats worked out. This week I finished a book. It was called Daring Greatly by Brené Brown. I've read a few of her books now. I've read The Gifts of Imperfection. I read Braving the Wilderness at the beginning of this year. Daring Greatly was excellent. It was one that, so I had never heard of Brené Brown until about a year ago. I was feeling challenged in the parenting arena, and so somebody had recommended this book, Daring Greatly, to me and said, like, this would be a really good book. I think it would, you know, you might find some things in there that would help you feel like you had more of a direction to go in with these parenting challenges that you're having. So I don't know why I decided that would be the third book of hers that I read, but I latched onto these other two, which were also really good books. But they were absolutely right. Like, this Daring Greatly book does have a lot of stuff in it that, especially for parenting, like not baby toddler type of parenting, but once you get into like middle school, high school years, just some really good lessons to kind of help you focus on a helpful way to parent. That's the right word. I think it's easy as parents to keep ourselves in the role of like boss. Like, I'm the commander. I'll tell you what to do. I'll tell you the right decision to make. I'll tell you what you need to be doing when. I'll tell you what your priorities are. I'll tell you how to do everything that you're doing. It's easy to stay in that position because as parents, we feel like, well, we know all the answers, so all our kids need to do is listen to us, right? So I think this person recommended Daring Greatly because it really is more about opening yourself up more and allowing your children to hear your stories, because really they are a lot more receptive to information if it is not given in a here's what you need to do sort of way. So if they're facing a challenging situation, let's say they're if they're having friend problems in middle school, that's a very typical thing to happen in middle school. So let's say your daughter has some friends, some of them are being mean to her, and she doesn't really know why, but she feels like sometimes she's included and then the next day she's excluded. And as a parent, oh yeah, that's because that's how junior high kids are, especially, unfortunately, the girls tend to be that way. So you can tell her, like, don't worry about that, just make sure you have other friends, and then when these friends are being jerks, you go play with the other friends. So yeah, that's an easy thing to say because you don't have to be vulnerable, you don't have to share any information about yourself, you don't have to relive any like old, oh, that really sucked when it happened to me sort of moments. But if you can share an experience with your kid about like, yeah, like I know that's hard. I remember in junior high, I had this friend that, blah, 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 and then share a similar experience, that can help, that'll help your kid feel like, oh, okay, well, this happened to mom, so, and she's okay. So, I can handle this. And, if you can share your stories in a way that can help your kids decide for themselves what to think, rather than just explicitly saying, here's what you need to think about this. They will be a lot more open to that, and they will feel less lectured, and they'll feel less, they'll feel less alone. They'll feel like you understand what they're going through. So really, that's what this Daring Greatly book is about. Being able to relate to other people by sharing your stories rather than just sharing your facts or your information. So anyway, I found lots of helpful information in the book. I tend to snap, so I don't have the book. I just read it on my Kindle app on my phone. So when I find something valuable on a page, I will do a little screenshot of it. And then I recently decided that for books like this, where I feel like there's a lot of things that I want to remember, I just take my bullet journal and I just dedicate a couple of pages and I write out like all of the little bits of information that I want to remember, because then I can always just flip back to these couple pages and go, oh yeah, that's why my son hasn't been responding to me well, because I forgot that I need to be doing this and this and this. So I find it very helpful to keep track of it this way rather than as screenshots on the phone, because Lord knows I can never find, I screenshot everything. Do you do that on your phone? Anything, like if I see a product on the internet that I want, I'll screenshot it. If I read an article and it has something in, some information I want to remember, I'll screenshot it. If I see, anything. So what I end up with is 500,000 screenshots in my photo roll and no way to search any of them. So it's a terrible way of organizing that kind of stuff. So writing it down in a little journal and then just deleting those screenshots is really the way to go. So I would highly recommend this Daring Greatly. It's a good book for just anybody, but I would say especially people who are parenting children like in the second half of their childhood, um, or even I mean I think that this stuff would even apply to parenting adult children. Because as that kid transitions from high school to college and into young adulthood, you are not the boss anymore. You are just you're a guide. So if you can share stories, they'll be open to hearing that, but they might not be open to hearing your opinion about things. So you need to be able to share information with them in a way that gets them to think for themselves, and does not make them feel like you are trying to tell them what to do. And I will say, because I know my mom listens to my podcast sometimes, my parents did an excellent job of this. And they didn't even have this book. So I don't know. I hope I am that successful with my own kids, that I am able to let them have their experiences. And some of them are going to be great. And some of them I'm sure will be disasters. And that's, life is messy. Okay. I think that is all I have to talk about today. So I hope you keep hanging in there. I know usually I say I hope you have a wonderful couple of weeks. Things have not been great here recently. This week has been a really rough one. Well, last week and this week have been kind of sucky here in the United States. Yesterday, everybody found out that one of the justices is retiring on the Supreme Court, and this was kind of the thing that a lot of people were really hoping didn't happen. And now it definitely is. And so this could be something very bad. I don't like to be pessimistic, but I am not feeling good about this. So I hope you keep hanging in there these next couple weeks. And I will too. And I'll see you in July. Bye.